Welcome to the Wholehearted Eating Podcast, where non-diet nutrition, weight-inclusive care, and integrative health collide. We're your hosts, Dana Montes and Christina Hoyt, licensed integrative clinical nutritionists and body image coaches.
And we believe you deserve to have a joyful relationship with food in your body, even if you have a chronic health condition or symptoms that just won't quit. On this show, together and with our guests, we're bringing the real talk, no BS vibe with tangible tools to help you pursue health and wellness without obsession or restriction.
Remember our disclaimer, this podcast is meant for general information purposes only and should not be taken as a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Okay. Go off.
We immediately jumped to recording because
you're like, hold on. We have to start.
I hope this is all in the beginning of the episode where everyone can hear it. We have Colleen on today. You guys know Colleen. If you're not following her on Instagram, you need to be. Colleen, do you want to tell everyone? Do you want to tell everyone your Instagram handle? And then we're going to jump into the conversation that we started before we started recording.
Sure. My Instagram handle is just at Dr. Colleen Reichmann.
Yes,
pretty
super easy.
To the point.
Easy. And Colleen, you talk about all different kinds of things. You're an eating disorder psychologist, but you also work a lot with body image stuff naturally. And then you talk a lot about mom culture as well and parenting and just like all of the things. But one thing that we've noticed a lot that I have really loved is you've been talking a lot about the nuances of, like beauty standards and reels around ageism and things like that. And right before we started recording, you said that those reels make people angry. And I would love for you to talk a little bit about why do you think talking about the nuance here in the narratives around either owning your aging or fighting against your aging gets people so riled up.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Would love to talk about this. I think it was probably about a year ago or maybe two, like a little while ago, I started just noticing, I started trying to follow more anti-ageism accounts on TikTok and Instagram, because I was just like, it just feels like something that's more on my mind lately, being like a millennial woman. And like, I don't know, I have there's a lot of botox talk around me and a lot of like, friends who pursue that. And so I was trying to like immerse myself in it. And I realized I found it really alienating a lot of the time because so much of it's like, aging is a privilege, like opt out, just you need to embrace your aging. And I was like, it just feels so much like people shouting at you that that's what you need to do to embrace it and that there's like one right way. And I don't know, like that aging is a privilege and that's it. So it's kind of like black and white. You're either like in that camp or you're in the camp of people like kind of in the fight to prevent aging and like clamoring to hold on to youthful appearance and doing all the things. And there are so many things available these days or that they say are available, like all the potions and creams and Botox and what's the other stuff like
the solo wave stuff, like the infrared like types stuff, like all those things. And I'm not gonna lie to you guys, it's appealing. Like I look at it and I'm like, ooh, this looks like, and it's also intertwined with self-care. So you kind of feel like if you're not doing it, then you're not taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
And like you kind of, it can, so it's complicated, right? Because why is it getting intertwined with self-care? But it is, and there is this kind of notion around if you're not doing it, then you're not taking care of your body. And you're not taking care of your skin and things like that. And like, there's a difference between, I didn't know that I needed a deeper moisturizer for my skin to not feel dry versus, I should be investing in this thing because I have crow's feet.
And a 24-step skincare routine. And oh my God, it's a lot.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And the targeting.
They get wild. And it does look so enticing. And to me, it started to remind me of, because I was like, Yeah, I feel like there's some self-care as like I've bought into on specifically on TikTok, people make it look so appealing. I don't know what it is that gets me, but like there's like tonic sprays and stuff that I've gotten. And when I'm doing it, I'm like, it smells really nice. Like I like this. But then it started to remind me of like them kind of like the feminist makeup conversation that's like always around and about like feminist forums about like so is this like using makeup as a creative outlet or as self-care, like something fun and like soothing to do for yourself? Does that like stand alone, or is it always intertwined with the fact that we're using makeup to like change our appearance to be more palatable for society and like all of that? Like it kind of started to remind me of that conversation. I was like, I just feel like there's no I think it's very nuanced. I don't think it's black and white, and I don't think there's an easy answer. So I started posting about it, just kind of saying how I felt alienated by the conversation, and that you're just saying like aging is a privilege and you need to not buy into all this garbage is kind of, it has the effect of shutting down the conversation and making people be like, yeah, I guess it is. And so I'm going to like just say that and then also do all this stuff behind closed doors, or like say that and hope that I'm one of the ones that like looks really young for a while. Like, I don't know. It's a very nuanced conversation, but I don't think people love that type of content a lot of the times because it's not like easily digestible. It's a little bit like, oh, well, we have to wrestle with this, like what we're all on some level probably buying into and what we all feel uncomfortable with, and things that we're saying maybe to our clients or the people we work with that we behind closed doors don't feel like totally aligned with. And it's just it's like a tricky thing to sit with, I think. So people sometimes get mad.
Yeah. Well, I think part of the reason that people are so not only polarized, but just like confused and like, wait, what am I supposed to do, is because this is not something that is readily available to consume on like Instagram and TikTok and stuff. And so I find as we get older as millennials and our friends start to get Botox, and then there's all these like infrared facials and hair growth and like all these different things. I mean, we've been fed all these different beauty standards from the time we were like 6 years old, and we're like, oh, we're trying to keep up with like pencil thin eyebrows, but now eyebrows are back, and it's like all these different things. And it's also very hard to figure out the difference between, like Christina was saying before, you might need a different kind of lotion to get deeper moisture in there versus here's my 24-step skincare routine. And then there's even things, especially with TikTok, is I was hearing horror stories of these like 10 to 12-year-olds that were going into Sephora and buying like retinol, and it was like ripping up their faces basically, because there's so much misinformation out there about, yeah, there are a bunch of different kinds of things like retinol and vitamin C and, hyaluronic acid and all these different things that, to be frank, I don't even know the difference between when we should be using those. But there's so much misinformation out there, or lack of nuance of, for example, with retinol, it's like it can be really helpful, as your skin changes to this type or something like that. But then you have these 10-year-olds out there that are like, oh, we should be doing retinol too. And then just like going into Sephora and probably buying this super expensive retinol cream that is extremely unnecessary for their age. So I think there's the lack of the conversation, the lack of nuance, and then it's also just really confusing. It's like learning a new language as well.
Yeah.
It is. It is like learning a new language. I think too, something that I was just thinking about, and maybe I'm just going to go there because I'm just going to share my truth.
I love when conversations start with, I'm just going to go there.
I'm just going to share my truth. You guys, I love the idea of a 24-step skincare routine.
I don't.
I love it because
it's too much for me.
It is way too much. Maybe not quite 24. Like obviously that's an exaggeration, but I do like the idea of a multi-step skincare routine. And I'll explain why. I think part of the reason why is because during the pandemic, it was just like, what am I doing any of this for? I'm just sitting inside my house. I'm not doing anything. I'm wearing sweatpants all day, every day. I'm chasing around my toddler. And it just felt like I had nothing for me, like nothing to like like, so I think like in a way I can understand why someone would be attached to the idea of getting really into a skincare routine, because it does in a way feel like self-care. Like it could be like the only time during the day when you're like quiet and alone and you're like doing your little thing and you're taking your time and you're spritzing the sprays. You're like, that smells good. And you're like enjoying the whole thing around it. And it does feel like in a way that like, oh, wow, I am in there somewhere inside here. Like there's a little bit of me here. And so to me, that's how I got into some of the skincare type of things was during the pandemic. And I was like, I feel dry. I feel dull. Like I feel like everything, like I'm not outside very much. And it just felt like this desire to do it. And I think so I get targeted all the time for all of these different products. And because I am kind of drawn to them, I do find them enticing. But it is hard to differentiate for myself how much of this is, do I want to have, lotion because it feels good or whatever. And it feels like self-care and I'm taking care of myself and I'm kind of like winding down at the end of the day, versus have I been told that this is bad and I need to do these things to feel like, what is bright skin? Like, what does that mean exactly? Like what, and so I think like sometimes it can feel like, okay, where does the consumerism start? And then how much of that can I separate between what is considered to be something that I feel good doing, like makeup, like Colleen, like you were saying, like, is it makeup for fun or is it makeup because I've been told that I don't look good without it? Or like you have to hit that elusive, like look like you're wearing, like don't look like you're wearing any, but wear some so you look good. You know what I mean? Like there's like all of those things. Like, is everyone quietly doing multi-step skincare routines and then pretending that they're not? Like like I'm just like very curious about that. And I think that it is really hard to navigate that nuance in so many ways. And I think it can be like I would be lying to say that the idea of Botox could sound really enticing for somebody. And then at the same time be like, nah, not today. The same way as sometimes I think we all like, I don't know if everyone would agree with this, but at least for me, like I might, and I tell my clients this a lot, is you might have the desire to lose weight for your entire life. You might always be thinking like, oh, I'd love to lose 10 pounds. Do I want to engage with that behavior because I know what it does? No, maybe not. Maybe yes. Like each person's going to decide for themselves. I think I sometimes look at stuff like the solo wave infrared stuff or a Botox and things like that as like, yeah, that would be nice. I wouldn't mind, getting rid of the sprinkle or whatever it is because it's new and it's different and I don't know what to make of it yet. You're still processing it, your body changing. And then at the same time being like, nah, I'm not going to spend the money on that. I'm wondering, have you guys struggled with that too?
Yeah.
Everyone's nodding their head.
I think it's more than like, it would definitely be the exception, not the rule, to not like for the rest of your life kind of grapple with wanting to pursue weight loss in our culture or like anti-aging regimens. And like, I think that's what it comes down to is like, when you think about those multi-step skincare routines, and this is for myself too, I like sit with the fact like, would I be doing it similar to like what I ask myself about exercise a lot? And the answer is not always like super clear. Like, would I be doing it if no one could ever see me and there wasn't this like kind of elusive promise if it will slow down the aging process? And if the answer is like, no, I probably wouldn't be doing all these steps, and I'm participating in a system that I'm constantly speaking out against. And that is like, that's just the hard truth. Like but like not to shame anyone, including myself, for doing that. Cause I think there's a lot of really valid reasons that people end up clamoring like in our culture for, but like weight loss and anti-aging, like cure, whatever we're calling this, like anti-aging, solutions. Like there are valid reasons and they have to do with like so much more than appearance. There's reasons for like like the fact is, especially as women in this culture, you are handed the message from like birth that after a certain point, there's an expiration date and you just become like less and less worthy. Like you become more and more of like an invisible person in society who people can kind of like, it's like a dark, I think I think this is why the content's not popular because it really is hard to sit with. Like that's what we're kind of like fighting against. And that's what we're like maybe grasping at some of the time with the things that smell nice and the lotions and Botox, like wanting to like still be considered worthy to take up space in society is just like, that's so it like that's why I have such a well of empathy for all of us who are like kind of in the rat race, but like wanting to question it. Like it's just a very complicated experience. I think almost all of us. It's like universal, basically, in my opinion, that we're in it.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you both brought up the diet culture conversation because I was also going to go there. Is like there's a almost direct parallel here between the body image conversation, the diet culture conversation, and also this kind of like health chasing conversation that we're all constantly having with our clients of like, of course you would want to pursue all of those avenues because we, from the time we're basically born, we're promised all of these unicorn cocktail of benefits that will come to us if we can only stay young, stay thin, stay healthy, basically. Mm-hmm. But depending on the genetic cards and the socioeconomic cards and all the other cards that you're dealt, that may not be, and most of the time is not readily accessible for most people, unless you've got gazillions of dollars, you're a family like the Kardashians or something, and then it's like, oh, actually, we will be the trendsetters of the beauty standards by doing all these absurd things in order to stay looking a certain way or create an even new look if you want to. And it's such a hard place to be. And like you were mentioning, Colleen, I think this content is not always popular because it's not easily digestible, but it's also people just want a straightforward answer. They just want the black and white. They just want the yes and no. They just want, just give me the thing that makes me feel like I have some iota of control over this. When in the back of your head, you kind of know, yeah, we don't really have control over aging, over our body weight, over our health. Like you can still do, just like with beauty, you could do the 72-step skincare routine. And at some point, your appearance is still going to look a little bit older. Mm-hmm. And like you mentioned in a couple of your reels, it's like, it's not we should just love our bodies or we should just embrace our wrinkles and our gray hairs and all the other things. That is not the issue, although people latch onto that as being the issue. They're like, just conform. How dare you? It's the system that's in place that makes us all feel like we're inferior and we have to do all these things to keep up with the Joneses and like make sure we look like we're 25 when we're 60 or something like that. Because if we don't, it makes us feel like, well, here is this dangling carrot that I could have taken, but I didn't. Especially if you do have the money, it's like, oh, well, I could have done that, but I'm choosing not to, which feels very counterculture. And I would say speaking about diet culture and body image and stuff is a lot more accepted nowadays than speaking about like, yeah, I don't really want to get Botox. People will be like, why? It's relatively affordable if you're middle class or above. Mm-hmm. Like, why would you not do that? Like, I got it for this wrinkle or something like that. And that's not to judge anyone for that. But it's interesting that people who may choose to not get Botox or not engage with different things like this are now the ones being judged. And it's like, can't we all just choose what we want to do and then not be judged for it? But no, capitalism, consumerism. Like...
Yeah. And I don't know if I like see it differently, but at least online, I don't know. In like I see a lot of more judgment almost for the women that are openly expressing that they do get Botox. It almost seems like, but maybe that's because I'm in those anti-ageist spaces trying to like immerse myself in that. So I see people like kind of vitriol and like that you're like buying into this and that also like really upsets me because I'm kind of like, well, because they're desperately clamoring to the point where they're injecting things into their faces or fillers and all that stuff that we don't know a ton about the outcome, like the long-term effects, but that is desperation to like, and that's not something that I ever want to like judge someone for or I don't know. I feel bad when I see people like kind of commenting negatively towards women that are participating because I'm like, that comes out of a right? Like it has to come out of a place of, and we all feel it, like like a desperation to hang on to this like physical embodiment of youth for like a very good reason because you're treated more and more like trash in this culture the older you get. Like we're not a culture that values elderly people or like the wisdom of age. So I don't know. I totally agree. I feel like there shouldn't be judgment in any direction, or we should all be really trying to check that and be like, well, what's the core driving um need for each person? Like the people that are opting out and opting in, like why are they doing that? What are they trying to do?
Yeah, and I think if we don't have those types of nuanced conversations, it can feel so alienating, right? Like I actually am not a part of this group. I wasn't involved in the conversation, but I heard about this conversation. So I'm involved in like a pretty big mom group in Philadelphia and in South Philly specifically, and it's awesome. But there is like a sub chat that's like a self-care sub chat. And some people started talking about Botox or what have you, and like talking about like, hey, I want to get educated about it. I want to understand what it is. Like, what
Mhm.
exactly are they putting inside of me? How do I understand what this is doing? Is so that they could like it was presented to me like people were asking so they could make their own informed decisions around it.
Mhm.
And then someone came in and basically bashed the people who were educating people about it and bashing the people who wanted it and basically saying like, I can't believe that this is even in a group that's talking about self-care. How could you possibly include something like Botox and self-care? And someone else said, well, where do we draw the line? Like, where is the line between a face cream and self-care and not? Or like,
Yeah.
we know that there are other areas of self-care, but what's the tipping point? When does it become damaging in your eyes that are like feeding into ageism and diet culture and unrealistic beauty ideals and all of these things and us trying to be something else
Mhm.
versus us just wanting to understand how to moisturize our skin? Where is the tipping point for you? Because it's really hard to find it. And I feel like when you come at a group, like let's say you're in like if you are trying to educate people, like often like we do, like on our podcast and stuff and on your reels, if you're trying to educate people around, here are some of the reasons why you might be doing this, because I look at everything from like, how do I create informed consent, right? I might still elect to do it. Like you might
Right.
still elect to do all of these things and that's cool, but let's understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and the motivations behind each step along the way. And then we can actually decide from a more informed place, why am I engaging in it? And I feel like when you come at people with that, it's so much like you're either for us or you're against us. And I know this is like a really cliched, awful, cliche, I guess, but is like you get more bees with honey. Like I feel like why are we if I feel like there was an opportunity for someone to say like, hey, I hear all of you guys. Clearly, everyone is struggling with the idea of ageism. I struggle with that too. Here's what I'm learning about it. And sometimes I decide, like, I grapple with the idea of do I want to engage in that? Do I not want to engage in that? And what does that look like? You
Mhm.
know, and like, and some people look at it like buying a stick of gum, you know, like, what's the big deal? Like, it's an impulse purchase, you know, I'm just going to go and get this thing and, you know, I'm going to, whatever, who cares? And I think like sometimes there is this layer of if you're not with us, you're against us on both sides, right?
Mhm.
And it makes it really difficult for anybody to feel comfortable having a more nuanced conversation around these topics and understanding why they might be choosing to do and engage in certain types of behaviors, right? And I think, like Colleen, I really loved how you said that about yourself too. Like, oh man, I struggle with that with exercise a little bit too. And I struggle with that with a lot of these things. Like, why am I doing it? Have I been told
Yeah.
something that maybe isn't true? Like, if no one were to ever see me, what would that look like? Um, and I think it can be just really complicated. I don't know. I
Yeah.
struggle with this hardcore, guys, and I'm just being completely honest because I think like There are times when I think to myself, like, I've been in the weeds with like COVID, like living in this like kind of bubble, and you have kids and you do feel like you don't even know like who you are as their core anymore. And then as your kids start to get older, you feel like, oh, I need to like find myself. I see this in like personal style and like, what am I drawn to? What do I not like doing? How do I take care of myself again? How do I feel like me again? But then also at the same time, what is the me that I'm like, what am I using to inform who I am and how I present myself to the world? I don't know if I'm rambling now, but if anyone
No,
agrees.
definitely. And then, it's really unfortunate what happened in that group also, because the people that were sharing about like, I'd love to learn more about Botox and whatever, they were never even able to get to that questioning stage of, I wonder why I feel like I want to get Botox, or like, I wonder why, or it could have simply been like, just interested. We're just poking around here. And then this kind of large presence comes in that's like, no, this is horrible. Like, how could you? And they're like, whoa, I guess I'm never going to bring it up in this group again because it's not a safe space. And for a lot of people with, going back to the parallel of like body image and weight, and then also this aging conversation, what a lot of people are trying to do by preventing these things from happening, of like gaining weight or signs of aging or anything, is like we're trying to create a sense of safety, because the messaging that we have been receiving since we were very young is like, oh, when you get older, you're just a spinster and no one's going to find you attractive anymore. And then we spiral from there of like, oh, well, if my partner doesn't find me attractive, maybe they'll just go find someone younger. Or like, if I'm not attractive, I'm not going to belong in my community. And we go back to these kind of core needs that are then being threatened if we gain weight or we show signs of aging. And then there's so many different examples in our culture of celebrities and other people who do every single thing possible to avoid aging or gaining weight or any of these other things. And it's to the point where it's like, well, of course you would just assume that when you hit a certain age or when your skin starts to show signs of aging, that you should do something, because that's just what everybody does. And it's just another step on the ladder that we're all going on. But if you never have the opportunity or have the safe container to even question, like, wait a minute, like, do I have to be doing this? Or like, why do we all think this way? You're probably never going to get to the next step. You probably would just go immediately to, like Colleen was saying, of like, okay, well, maybe I'll start to learn more about this stuff on the surface. But like, if I want to get Botox, if I want to do a 24-step skincare routine, if I want to get this infrared thing, whatever, then I'm just going to do it behind the scenes because I don't want to be judged. When in reality, a lot of people are just doing it anyways. So I feel really bad for that situation.
Yeah. And it'll never be that black and white, like that, the thing that people want, like you're either in or you're out, because like you just think about the whole continuum of like appearance based struggles. Like say, so like it is like, where do you draw the line? Like there is no clear cut, like, so say, just taking it even into broader like plastic surgery. Are we saying like breast implants, that's crossing a line because you're getting like, plastic surgery, but then like what about push-up bras? Or what about like what about like clothing that you subconsciously are buying to like quote unquote enhance your like figure, what we've all read in magazines, without even fully like realizing that that's what you're doing, or you're just kind of more shopping for the male gaze. Like when the line is not there, like it's like ever changing. It's a continuum. So there is no, unfortunately, I think we all kind of want it because it is like satisfying to be like, it's right or wrong, like in or out. And it's just not, it's like a million shades of gray. And so I think that's what it makes it almost like a gaslighting conversation where you're like, wait a minute, but I still feel like this, and I still like, and then does that make me a bad feminist or a bad like clinician? It's just because it is a million shades of gray. But online, you'd think like, especially with those social media, like the little like the snippets. It's just not, maybe I should stop making reels about this because it really isn't like a social media appropriate, like you can't summarize it in one, right? Like you
Don't
cannot.
ever stop. I love them. Like,
Well, you know what we do though is because social media is the way it is. We always say social media is where nuanced goes to die, right?
Yes.
It's like because you have in order to keep growing and get your message out there on social media, coming from someone who's been extremely inconsistent on social media, but used to be very consistent, is like the only way to get people's attention is those very kind of short, grabby things. But what we do, because we have the podcast, is when people start like blowing up the comments of like, well, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? We're like, well, actually, we have an entire hour-long podcast conversation if you want to listen to it. And they're like, oh. And then it just ends the conversation.
Yeah, which is like genius and so true. Social media, that's kind of why I eventually my account, like it doesn't grow anymore. Like it used to be, the growth was exponential. And then at some point in my career, I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like the more extreme, like those are the things that get traction. Those like really easy, like this is this is kind of this is a radical view and it's like pretty like black and white, cut and dry. And I can't. So I try to be like, I'm just extra thoughtful now about what I post, and it has stopped growth. And I'm like, okay with that. Cause I just can't participate in that race anymore. I can't do it.
yeah, because then it is exhausting. And you think to yourself, like, well, what am I racing for?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, what is this for? Because if I don't really believe some of the things, or not that you don't believe the things that you're saying, right? We typically always believe everything that we're putting out there, even if it is extreme. But there's always like 5 steps back that you're kind of like, well, I do believe that, right? In an extreme, like in a vacuum. Yes, I believe that aging is beautiful and like all of the things. In a vacuum, I would love and encourage people, and I love that we're entering an era where women are speaking up against idealized body and beauty standards. But then it's like, well, there's also like 5 steps deeper into the iceberg here that's like, yes, I believe this entirely and I want to subscribe to it. But then there's the reality of the situation and living within that system, right? Like Dana was talking about in the safety, there is a layer of, okay, I'm either going to go against culture and I'm going to be part of this counterculture and I'm going to join together with those people who are doing that, which is a valid choice. And then there's also the people out there who are like, I'm going to go in this other direction and I'm going to focus on these things that I really don't give a shit what they're talking about over there. Like that is their life, cool, whatever. Then there's the people in the middle who are like, I don't know where to land. Like, and I feel like a lot of our podcast, Dana and I talk about this a lot. Our podcast is the people in the middle. And the people in the middle are not seeing one thing, the extremes are not hitting for them. And because there is so much complexity and nuance and deeper understanding around each one of these things. And so it makes it really hard to navigate that in these conversations, because yes, on the one side, I want to let everyone know like, hey, this is true. You don't actually have to fear your body aging, because it's going to. Your body is also going to change, whether you like it or not. But yes, there's also these tools that are out there in the world that are telling you that they can do some do it very effectively, right? It's like, so then how do you then, if you are in this place of like struggling between these two things, I sometimes will say to myself, not like out loud to my clients, but I'll think to myself, all right, where's the harm reduction here? Where's the middle ground that I can help them land on, where one extreme is harmful for their body, right? There's like extreme, eating disorders and extreme plastic surgery and all of these different types of things that can be really harmful for their body and their life and their mental health and everything. And then where is there in the middle? Like, where is this place where they can land that is definitely less harmful, right? And then, but then on the other side, they're never going to get over here, and they don't have to feel more aligned with their health and wellness and all of the different things. I think sometimes there is this conversation out there that's either you're over here and you're healed, or you're over here and you're not healed. And I think there's like a really beautiful place in the middle where you can live in the nuance and in the gray. and both can be very valid. Like you can believe these things and then also say at the same time, I'm struggling and I'm going to meet myself where I am. And I think that's like really hard for people to get to.
It's also so hard because you can't leapfrog from one end to the other. So what are we talking about here? It's like people, they want everything to be at one end of the harm reduction spectrum or the other, or whatever spectrum that we're looking at, just because it's easier for them to compartmentalize or something like that. But let's say you're at, one far end and you're like, oh my gosh, there is that other side. Like, you don't just fly all the way over it. It's like you have to do this whole process, just like we talk about with our clients with eating disorders and body image and weight and all these different things. Is like you have to start doing the deep digging and untangling of where did all these beliefs come from and how do I start to wade through them? And then as I'm going on this journey, there's going to be obstacles in the way. And how do I navigate those when they come up? One thing that we're always saying to all of our clients is, we would never fault you for ever having a thought again of like, maybe I should do this diet, or like, maybe I do want to lose weight, or maybe I do want to, do something about that. But the difference is, as you're making progress here, is those thoughts may come fewer and farther in between. And then like Christina was saying before, it's, okay, do I want to take action on this thought? And like, do I want to take action on this thought right now? Am I making a plan to take action on this thought? But one thing that I would encourage everyone to think about with this conversation is you're allowed to draw, your line wherever you want. And that line is allowed to move. And the only thing that we would encourage you to do is just think about, if you're thinking about doing, whatever, and this doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm in Target and like, I wonder if I should buy this lotion because of the patriarchy or because of these other things. It's like, it's just a lotion at the end of the day. Like we can get over it. But like, if you're thinking of doing, Botox or making a really expensive purchase of, something that's involving skincare or beauty or whatever, it would be interesting to think about, why do I feel like I need this thing? What's the problem that I'm trying to fix? And is that a big problem in terms of my quality of life? And or am I being told that this is a problem and I'm trying to be sold the solution?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like the getting curious. If you can work to get curious like throughout the day without the shame element that sometimes comes into this with the more extreme conversations, then I think it's a really it can be a really beautiful process of moving. That's like, to take it back to the clothing conversation, that's kind of what my process was like with clothing. And I do feel like it's much easier. And maybe some of this comes with age, actually, but it's much easier than with other things for me to now. I used to be a person like in college who was very much like married to the idea of dressing for the male gaze without even realizing it. But it was like influenced everything. And then like slowly I started to get curious and ask myself, like, why? Like, what is it getting me? And do I like it? And now I'm just at a very different point with clothing. And I really do feel like pretty firmly, like I like it for creative purposes. And I don't dress for the male gaze anymore, including for my husband. It's just like, I really definitely dress for like myself and potentially for other women in like a fun way, but not for males anymore. And it's been like a really wonderful, freeing, years long process. And I think we can all probably do like lean into that for things like fat phobia and like ageism, like all of the more appearance based struggles.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot when I'm making clothing choices or like purchasing stuff, or I use Nuuly a lot. I talk about it a lot on here. I love Nuuly. But I'll like, sometimes what I'll do is I'll think to myself, what kind of vibe do I want to have? Like, well, how do I want to present myself to things? And if like Casey's style for like what he likes is totally different than what my style is for what I like. He doesn't tell me that I look bad or anything. It's not like that. But if I dressed with his gaze in mind, it wouldn't be aligned with my vibe, And so I think like sometimes I think that's actually like a really freeing place to think about, how do I want to present myself and how do I want to feel? Like the same way that Dana's like, I hate the idea of a long level skincare routine. I'm like, ooh, that sounds like the only time of the day when no one is bothering me and I can actually
I'm too lazy for that.
and I can actually do something for myself. And I'm not going to say that I'm not like beyond getting a solo wave. Those things look cool. Like all the different things about it. But I think there is something to say like about being able to decide for yourself, how do I want to marry these conflicting parts of myself, like, and the things that I'm learning, and how can I not put so much on me as an individual and still honor who I am as an individual, but also honor where I am in my process of the systems that are influencing me, because every system is influencing us all day, every day, down to like, you guys all know this, but like down to the food choices that we're making, down to like where we're sending our kids to daycare, what kind of choices we're making, where we're buying our house. There's systems in place that are influencing every single aspect of that. And I think it's kind of a cool place to be, and being like, that's the system, and be like, but I'm going to do it anyways because I like the vibe. And it's like, or like, yeah, I know that that's part of the whole process. And I think like there is something to say that gives a level of freedom with that for people when they're struggling with that, and being able to say like, yeah, I know, like, I know that there are beauty standards that are out there. I'm struggling with it heavily. I want to work on it. Are things keeping me, is this struggle keeping me from being able to do things that I care about and show up in the world at things that I care about? And then at the same time, how do I also, like, a lot of times, like, people will say, I know that this is bad. It's like, ooh, it's not bad, right? It's just like part of the clog of the system, and knowing that it's part of the system, and being able to say like, yeah, like some people in the system think that anything outside that's like not in a contradiction to that system is like perpetuating the system. But I'm sorry, me as an individual, whether or not I buy face lotion or with hyaluronic acid in it or vitamin C oil or whatever, is not going to stop the system. Like, and I'm not going to put that on myself to make me feel like my one purchase is going to change that entire system. I can be aware of the system. I can be doing stuff for my daughters and for the next generation so that they can make earlier informed choices, and being able to maybe not be a part of the system as much as I was brought up a part of the system. But I think that's like really all we can really do. And I hate like that. I know that people feel like that gives me nothing, Christina.
Well, I think there's a big difference between consuming these things for yourself and then perpetuating those things also in a way, like we all have social media, for example. If we all decided to go get Botox for whatever reason, I think there's a big difference between at the individual level than, going to every single one of your friends and being like, oh my God, Botox saved my marriage. Or like, going on social media and being like, this is the cure to everything and everyone should be doing it. Like, do whatever you want. But, if you feel a certain way about something like Botox or plastic surgery or anything like that, and you think it, the trend or the overall concept of that is contributing to a system that you'd rather not be a part of the system itself, you don't necessarily have to feel bad about wanting to do something like that. But again, there's a big difference between I'm going to kind of consume and engage with this on an individual level versus I'm going to shout it up from the rooftops that it's going to fix your whole life if you do this.
Totally. Or like it's going to provide me something, or I'm better than other people because I have this. To me, like, I just think of so much. And Colleen, I'm sure you can, like, you relate to this, like having a daughter. I have 2 daughters, and I think all the time about what can I do to represent myself to them in a way that I want them to think about themselves. And I think a lot of it comes down to the motivation and the influence behind how I'm making choices, right? Like, why am I doing some of the things that I'm doing? How do I want to present that to my daughter? Like when Elodie asks me, Mommy, why are you wearing makeup today? She loves makeup. She has her own makeup kit. Like, she's all about it. And, And I'll say like, well, I like wearing makeup. Like I like the way that it feels. I like the way that I look when I'm wearing it. I find it to be fun. Sometimes I like to be really playful with it. Like, and other times, like I don't want to wear it and I don't wear it at home or when we go out sometimes. And I think like the way that things are presented, I don't know. I think about that a lot about what parts of the system do I want to share with the next generation? I don't know if you relate to that.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a really like important, motivating, like driving force. Like if there's anything that can like sort of change my mind in a more definite way, it is thinking about like, well, what do I want my daughter or my son to kind of feel about their bodies and aging and like what message do I want to send them? And again, I also think maybe it was like we might have had a conversation about this already, but I also think there's room to say like you can kind of be like quote unquote messing up and engaging in the systems. Like, even have like, I really strongly believe you can be a parent with an active eating disorder. And as long as you're like really just trying and like working on it and communicative with your children, that there's not going to be like any higher likelihood of your kids like, I think you can really be like, do some beautiful mothering and have like an active eating disorder. It's all about like, so we can fall down often, but like, as long as we're communicating with them and trying, I think that's kind of what like shines through, or at least that's the belief.
I totally agree with that. I think we did talk about that once in a previous episode that we had met with and talked about, because I remembered very distinctly kind of talking about that. But I think also too, like, I think it's important. I see that a lot of times with my own clients. I actually think it's a really beautiful way of talking about diet culture and talking about the ways that, and, you can easily bring this up in ageism and you can bring this up in beauty standards too, and saying like, hey, we're all a part of this thing and I struggle with that. I don't want you to struggle with it. But if you do, it's safe for you to come and talk to me about it. If you start feeling weird about your body, let's talk about it. I'm here. I've struggled with it too. You're not alone in that struggle. And it kind of creates an opportunity for a lot more dialogue and a lot more open dialogue around that and being able to support your kid. I think that's really beautiful and such a good
Until
point.
they turn into a teenager and they're like, you don't understand me, mom.
Yeah.
Although my friend's daughter, my friend just told me a story about her 5-year-old. And then like, I told her, I was like, I just can't picture them being like this. Like, they're like the sweetest little kid. And she was 5 and she yelled at her mom, "You're the worst." And then stomped up the stairs, closed her, like right as she closed the door, like, "The worst." And I was like, oh man, be careful. The tweens are going to be rough.
Coming.
Oh no.
But we were laughing about it because it's so true. Because like, like sometimes like Elodie will say to me, like, I can do what I want with my body. I'm like, yes, but you still have to brush your teeth.
Yeah. There are
some
non-negotiables.
Like, there's some non-negotiables here, And she's like, no, but I get to say, I'm like, yes, you do, except for bathing and general hygiene.
Yeah.
Don't hate me, Elodie, when you listen to this when you're older. I love you.
She will never listen to this.
You did brush your teeth, sweetheart. But it's so true. Like there is like this like push pull. And I think that happens a lot internally too. Like this push pull between, okay, I know that I can do what I want, but I'm also influenced by this thing. So I don't know. Is there anything else that you guys want to share as we wrap up?
I don't think so. I think we did the classic wholehearted eating, understanding, bring curiosity and compassion, and also leave with a permission slip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that sums it up. That was, I have no notes. I like that. The flow.
No notes. I like it. All right. Well, thank you so much, Colleen, for coming on. We could obviously talk about this all day. We should probably do a whole nother one around mom culture and how and all of that and how it gets influenced by it. Like that could be like a whole nother thing.
It's entire. That's a mini series.
Exactly. So we might have to do that. So
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. And
thank you.
Thanks for having me. This was great.
Awesome.
I'm sure we'll have you back on soon.
Yeah.
Hey friends, it's Dana, and thanks so much for listening to the Wholehearted Eating Podcast today. Find us on social media at Wholehearted Eating Pod on Instagram and at wholeheartedeating.com for more information about working with Dana and Christina for one-on-one nutrition counseling. If you love the show, we would love you forever if you'd share an episode with your family and friends, or tag us on social media, or leave a 5-star rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts to help more people find the show. Check out patreon.com/wholeheartedeating to help support the show and get access to ad-free episodes, bonus episodes with us and our guests, episode discussions, new resources we're creating for Patreon, and so much more. If you have questions for us, feedback on the show, potential topics or guests you'd love to have on, shoot us an email at hello@wholeheartedeating.com, and we'll see you next week.